The words how long indicates that this has been going on for quite some time. So it is in the church. People want the assurance that they are saved and members of the church, but they want to hold to their sin too. And they want heaven, but they also want a beer now and then. They want the Bible, but they want to curse when things go wrong. They want to be able to pray when they have a need, but they want to live a life by their own rules and to do that and those things that please themselves. My friend, that will never work. We might as well come to understand right now that the violent allegiance is as wicked as open idolatry. This is proven by Christ's condemnation of the church of Laodicea in Revelation chapter 3, the 3rd chapter, where God says they are lukewarm and I'll spew you out of my mouth. A person is either for Christ or against him. You cannot be neutral in this walk with God. You can't occupy the middle of the road. Jesus said it this way: he that is not with me is against me, and he that getteth not with me scattered abroad. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 30. Where you do stand in regards to the Lord. Where do you stand today in regards to the Lord Jesus Christ? Where is your stand? He questioned them. Then he puts them into a quandrum, a dilemma. Elijah presents the people with a problem. He tells them that they are being contradictory and contrary. If God is Lord, then Baal cannot be. If Baal is Lord, then God cannot be. What Elijah is saying, church, is that both God and Baal cannot exist. There's room in the universe for only one Lord and one God. They are challenged to choose who they will follow. And I believe that this is the same challenge that we face today. Many who claim to love the Lord are also holding hands with the world, the flesh, material possession, or whatever. This is a contradiction. Either God is the Lord or he isn't. If he isn't, then those things that you hold to must be. The bottom line is simply this. You have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Who will you serve? Who's really Lord of your life? You really cannot go both ways. If you say you love the Lord and deny him by your life, your action and your activities, then you really don't love him at all. So what is going to be to you? So what's it going to be? You got to make up your mind whether or not in this dilemma, who you will serve. You got to choose. Choose you this day who you will serve. But just like everyone else, the other thing is a quietness. Quandary, a quietness. When Elijah extended this challenge to the people, they just said nothing. This is just what you would expect from people like these. You see, they want to say that God is the Lord, and they want to say that Baal is the Lord. They want to be able to stand in the middle, and the quietness indicate their neutrality as such. They are cowards. And they prove it by trying to stay in the middle of the road. Friends, there are times when you can walk in the middle and be all right. But there are times when you have to have the backbone to stand up for that which is right against that which is evil. Amen. Anything less is cowardness. Many people think that by being quiet and maintaining a low profile, that trouble and sin will just go away. My friend, if that's your philosophy, then you are deceiving yourself. Hear me. Sometimes life will present you with opportunities to shut up. But more often, faith will present you with opportunity to stand up. Life will present you with opportunity to shut up. But more often, faith presents you with opportunity to stand up. We see as Elijah extends his challenge to the potentate, he then extends his challenge to the people. He gave them a question, he put them in a quandrum, then there was that sense of quietness. Once he obtained his attention from the potentate and from the people, he now challenged the prophets. Verse 22 to 24. Before Elijah finished, he presented a challenge to the prophets of Baal. He called upon them to put their faith in their God on the line. He tells them to put up or to shut up. He says, either you put up or you shut up. It's showtime. It's time to show it. Now, understand that Elijah has called for 850 prophets. 450 showed up. The prophets that showed up was those persons that were the prophet that Baal was known as the prophet of fire. We're going to talk about that briefly in a minute. So he challenged them to show up, put up. First of all, the team. The team. Elijah is just one against 450. Yet he is willing to stand for God. Talk about courage. Talk about guts. Talk about faith. That's what it's all about here. Where are the Elijahs today who will stand against everyone if need be so they can stand with God? Where are the Elijahs today who will stand up for righteousness, who will stand up for holiness, who will stand up for justice, who will stand with God? Where are they? This is what I mean when I say we have to choose sides. Let us not fear the fact that we are outnumbered, church. Let us not waver because it may appear that we stand alone. If we stand with God, we are never alone. Matthew chapter 28 and verse 20. I'm with you always. And Hebrews chapter 5, Lo, I'm with you, I'll never leave you. He is ever there, and he will see us through all the battles. Remember David? He stood when everyone else cowered in fear. Because he stood, God brought a great victory. When you and I stand up for God, God will. So that's the team. Look at the terms. In verse 23 and 24. The terms. Elijah lays out the challenge to the people and the prophet. They will offer a bull and a prayer. That's all they have to do. A bull and a prayer. The God who answered by sending fire from heaven will be worshipped as God, of course. Elijah tells them not to put no fire under. Now Baal is also known as the God of fire. So it was a fear challenge. A fear challenge. History tells us and record that often pagan altars had a dugout underneath it, where the priest would hide and light a fire, making it look as though the pagan god is responding. This was just fine with the Baal prophets and so. He said, okay, we can call on your God of fire, bring that fire, I'll call on my God. See, so this was fine. After all, Baal was a god of life. He was a fertility god. He was seen in the rain and in the sun. They felt that he was responsible for life. Of course, Baal hadn't been able to send rain. Because remember now, when Elijah says there'll be no rain, he really was challenging Baal. You're the God of rain, and I'm telling you, you can't send rain. That's what he did. And now he's challenging another ability, attribute, fire. He won against the rain, now the fire comes. Because Baal could not send rain in 3.5 years. But surely they thought he could send fire. You see, the worshippers of Baal believed that he could be seen in the great thunderheads that brought rain to the land. But they also thought that he could be seen in the sun itself. When they look up to the heavens, in the skies, they saw the bright burning sun overhead, and they felt as though they were looking directly at Baal. This was a contest that they felt confident that they will win. Do you know that the English word bonfire came from the old Saxon word Balefire? Interesting, huh? Of course, Satan would have given them fire if he had been permitted. Satan would have given them fire if he had been permitted, you know. Remember in Job chapter 1, he brought fire down. God allowed them to. He destroyed Job's stock and everything because God allowed them to. God permitted him to. So he would have done it, and God permitted him. But of course, there was some in the crowd that would remember that Jehovah had also spoken by fire in the past. They might remember the burning bush, the fire in the altar of the temple, the pillar of fire in the wilderness, the fact that God had consumed the murmuring crowd with fire, or the fact that God's fire lit the mount on Mount Sinai. Either way, it seems fair, a fair challenge to the people and to the prophet Baal. The God Elijah was talking about was a God of fire, and the God the prophet Baal was talking about was a God of fire. But there's a tragedy in all of this. The whole tragedy lies in the fact, church, that the people was even willing to consider that Baal might be real. Just to consider that fact. After all that God had done for them, how could they stoop to the place where they would even consider a contest of this nature? Imagine them expecting God to prove himself to them. After all, he already done so many things to the nation of Israel. Look at verse 24, the latter part. The people say, it is well spoken. We approve of this contest. But before we harshly and be harsh with the people of Israel, maybe we too should admit that we are often guilty of the same thing. We are often guilty of the very same thing. When we allow life and all its distraction to crowd God out, we are as guilty as they are. When we come to the place where we wonder what God has to offer, then we're in bad shape. When we come to the place in our lives where we question whether God is still capable and still able to supply. All that God has brought us through over the years, how you have taken care of us, how you have supplied and met all our needs and taken care of His church. All of the testimonies that we have heard of the awesomeness of God. And now we come and we want to challenge God to see whether God is able. When we forget His blessings and His power, His grace and His goodness, we are in terrible shape spiritually. When we realize that we are substandard spiritually, we are guilty of asking God to prove Himself to us. When God has to compete with everything else in our lives just to get a minute of our attention, let alone our faithful service, we are inside and shaped spiritually. Do you see how it's possible to get to this position? When we simply allow things to take the place of our God, then God challenges us is to choose who's God in our lives. Then He challenges us to know where we stand. We find ourselves as the dilemma. We find ourselves where we are confronted with the fact whether or not we are causing the things to take place in our lives. Whether we are standing with God or against God. This morning I want to challenge us to choose whom we would serve. The challenge is extended to each one of us today to choose when we stand before Almighty God. God challenges us as a people. Choose you this day. How long will you waver and vacillate between God and the world? You cannot hold hands with God and the world at the same time. You have to choose whom you will serve. Our Father and our loving God, help us to make wise decisions and the right decision as to whom we will serve. Grant to us, Lord, as we seek to walk with you, the courage and the faith to trust you. Even though we may not understand or see, we walk by faith and not by sight. Thank you again for the privilege, the worship to serve you. In Jesus' name.